welcome to another episode of the Coach and Benway podcast. I am the co-host, Dr. Benway, accredited.
By whom?
I'm here with by all the people that matter. I'm here with Coach, an unaccredited title, Red Pill, and there's been a lot of interesting news this week to keep up with. What with the president using the N-word maybe in the recording, or Sweden.
Speak up! I didn't hear you. Could you repeat that, please? Could you?
I think she means nigger. Sorry. Maybe if I whispered it, it'll pass through the algorithm. Let's see. Sweden's on fire. The vast pedophilia in the Catholic Church again. But I think maybe it's interesting to start, ironically enough, with the birth of perhaps a new folk figure. By that, I mean the gentleman some of you are aware of. Hopefully you'll all be aware of by the end of this conversation. What was his name? Richard Russell?
Yeah,
man who I think he was like a baggage handler or something of the kind at one of the, I think the Seattle Airport SeaTac.
Yeah.
And managed to get a hold of a commercial aircraft and fly around and do some interesting stunts. Managed to talk to people in a sort of publicly recorded fashion.
Yeah.
Crashed the plane, unfortunately, but has somehow caught the attention of a lot of people.
Well, the incident in and of itself, I think, is remarkable. I mean, it's not every day that they steal a plane from an airport, a baggage handler, right? Or I don't know what he was actually. I was told, but it slipped my mind. But he was a staff at an airport, and he was vetted, and everything was hunky dory with him, and he had no signs of anything. Everything seemed to be on the up and up. I do believe that he was married, but without children. And he seemed to be fine. And, he just up and hops in the plane when it was just, waiting there for whatever, Alaska Airlines, I believe. And he, closed up the doors and gunned up the engine. Actually, he took the one of those trucks that pull the planes, right, around the tarmac. Well, he took one of those trucks and pulled the plane into position on the runway. And he got on the plane and he took off, right? And apparently from the recording, he said that he had learned to fly from video game simulators and such. He didn't know how to land, though. That was the problem. And he did all kinds of stunts. He did like a barrel roll, which is kind of cool.
Barrel roll, a lot of loops and everything. I'll tell you what's interesting, and maybe some people would consider it eerie, but I think what makes this guy compelling is precisely that you're hearing his voice in the process of all of this.
Yeah.
Now, we've gotten elements of kind of compelling, not necessarily banter, but certainly compelling bits of work product from some interesting characters. The one that comes to mind very quickly is that manifesto of the Unabomber, which frankly is compelling.
Yeah.
I've even had normie people say, yeah, he actually was right on a number of points.
Yeah.
But rarely do you ever really get to hear the voice of a guy in process of doing whatever very socially unacceptable thing he's doing. And what was compelling to me is just how, self-effaceive and enjoyable he was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was and it's the big regret for me listening through the whole thing. I thought to myself, this is the kind of guy who, if I encountered in public life, be it at a bar, on the train, wherever people encounter each other, I would have actually enjoyed his company.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing. Like he said, when he says, I probably have a screw loose or two, someone who's comfortably being able to say that, they're probably on edge, but they're really not crazy.
Yeah.
And he doesn't come across as crazy.
Yeah.
In the video, he comes across as a guy, at his kind of rope's end or wit's end, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so, like I said, for some people it's chilling, or other people it's just fascinating.
Yeah, because there's something fundamentally harmless about the whole situation. I mean, I don't mean to belittle the man, okay, but there was something about him, about the sound of his voice, that you thought, this is a man who would never try to harm anybody on purpose, okay? Inadvertently, of course. I mean, we can all get into an accident or whatever, but you don't feel that there was any kind of malice in the man. And there was clearly, he was not like unhinged, okay? Because Ted Kaczynski, for instance, the very fact that he sent these bombs proved the maliciousness in his heart, or the urge to hurt other people, to ease the pain that he was feeling. But in this case of Rich Russell, what did he do? He stole a plane and flew it around, and had you could hear him on the recording being like whooping it up as he's doing his little maneuvers. Right? He was enjoying himself. What?
Yeah. Hey, he's like, hey, you think I could do a barrel roll?
Yeah.
And he said that in that tone of voice.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I said, even at the tragic element when he crashed the plane, the fact that he crashed it into a sparsely populated wooded area, an island, in fact, tells me, that's not an accident. This guy did not go out of his way to cause trouble. Real trouble for anyone. Now, by real trouble, I mean someone actually getting hurt.
Nobody was hurt except him.
Property was dead.
Who gives a shit?
That's kind of.
It's stuff
and everything.
Okay, and exactly. Nobody's going to lose their job over this because the airplane was insured. So no harm, no foul in the overall scheme of things. Okay,
and like I said, there's also just very interesting lines of self-awareness, like you said. Oh, I learned to apply from video games, or hey, I probably have a screw loose here or there. Sorry, He says, my family. I have family and friends who are probably going to be embarrassed about this. I just want to apologize, to them over that
Jesus.
one. And then the other thing he said that he's like, when they said like, trying to convince him to not do any trouble, he says, I'm just a white guy. I'm going to get fucked for this no matter what, kind of thing. I mean,
I didn't hear that part. I didn't hear that part.
I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he said something to the effect of like, I'm just a white guy. There's no hope for me, kind of thing, which I think is part of the interesting appeal to this.
Yeah, because our side has really taken to him. A lot of people are using beautiful, beautiful images of that plane in the sunset flying around, right? I mean, there were a number of beautiful images taken from that whole thing. Because I've been to that area of the country, and it is really quite beautiful. And so, and a lot of people are using those images of that plane as their avatar. And people really connected with the guy because he was an easygoing kind of guy. He meant no one any harm. He and the thing is, you suspect that was the happiest he had been in like a long, long time, and just doing his loop-de-loops or whatever. He must have felt, I mean, my impression was that he must have felt so free, And the thing is also the fact that everybody knew who he was and that he had broken the law by stealing the plane and that he was fucked, right? It gave him clearly like a sense of freedom, Nothing matters anymore, And I think that clearly he was suicidal. He knew getting on the plane because from what I understand of flying, the hard part is landing. It's not taking off. Taking off is actually kind of easy. It's the landing part that's harder. And you got to know what you're doing. And this guy clearly did not. And he just knew that, okay, this is going to be the end. I'm going to die. And so I'm just going to enjoy the moment, And that kind of, I found it so, they sent up a couple of National Guard F-16 fighter interceptors, or I don't know what model they were, it doesn't matter, to intercept this guy in case he started, flying into a city or something like that. They were probably going to shoot him down, which would have been the completely sensible thing to do. But I suspect that those pilots, they were probably listening in to what he was saying as he was flying around, and they must have known exactly what this guy was about. He didn't mean it. He didn't mean to hurt anybody, And I think that kind of like, I think that's what affects, at least me as I'm talking to you now and articulating it. That's what affects me about the guy. The guy, his life felt so miserable that he was like, fuck it, I'm going to suicide, but I'm going to do it in a fun way. I'm not going to go to the bathtub and slit my wrists or take the pills and the alcohol. No. I'm going to do something fun. I'm gonna fly around a plane. I've always wanted to fly, and I couldn't because I didn't have the education, I didn't have the opportunities, whatever. I'm gonna fly, goddammit. I'm gonna fly a plane, and I'm gonna do whatever I want, and it'll be fun. And it was. It was a lot of fun.
Well, like I said, I feel like I don't know anything about human beings if I can't say this with some degree of light authority. I guarantee you those pilots fundamentally understood and appreciated and probably were emotionally connecting with the guy who got the joy out of flying and doing all those stunts.
Yeah.
the guys who are in a military jets who basically have to do those
Yeah.
maneuvers and are selected for those jobs because of their capabilities understood damn well what he was doing. There was no indication from what I gathered of their having any interest to shoot him down unless, to your point, he actually was going to do something. There was no indication that he actually was going to do something. So I think they were just trying to make, to the extent, well, they couldn't really do anything. Or fighter jets, they can't nudge the plane to land. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a remarkable situation, and I think that how could I put this? The Killdozer episode of a few years ago was different because it was over a land dispute, and the guy was just pissed off at a lot of people, and he created the Killdozer and drove around destroying the people who'd done him wrong, right? But there was something about him too that I connect with. Okay, it's something a little bit magical of him deciding, all these people bully me, so I'm going to bully them back in a way that they can't touch me. Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate this guy, and I like you said, he sounded like a good guy. He sounded like a good guy.
There's something about this guy which there's only one artist who would fully understand this guy and depict him in a way that he should be depicted. That's Werner Herzog. If you've ever seen certain Werner Herzog movies about Little Dieter Needs to Fly, or Stroizak, or all of these other just eccentrics of Americana. Yeah, because Herzog loves Americana. He actually is sympathetic to Trump too. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yeah, he had to walk that back.
He is totally. Actually, it's only David Lynch who walked that back. But Herzog would have understood this guy completely, because it is that weird folksiness here. There's just something, like Paul Bunyan about it in a weird way.
Yeah.
And it's funny. We were talking about Fight Club not too long ago, and this feels like a connection to that. Not in the sense that Fight Club, there was a lot of resentment. Operating in the characters of Fight Club. There was significant anger, not the least of which tied to the fact that our narrator's father, or at least his proxy, Tyler Durden, and invariably himself, had a father figure issues, absent fathers. But beyond that, I think there's a moment in that story, and it's more than a moment. There's a theme in that story of how the narcolepsy of the day-to-day life in the society we live now needs to be punctuated or punctured by acts of just primal human expression. And that can take the form of just violently punching each other and feeling the emotional pain of getting whacked in the face. Or it could be the emotional reverie of being like, I need to fly. Yeah. And I'm going to get out and be on a plane. And, yes, I may die as a result of this, but for these few moments, I'm going to have the best time that anybody could ever have hoped to have.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes, absolutely. That there's no question that these stories, Killdozer, SeaTac Man, the Fight Club, they're all connected to the same impulse. Yesterday, I put out a video about university education. And I said that it was basically a accreditation and indoctrination center.
You repeated one of our podcast episodes on this topic. Yeah, you didn't give me credit, you schmaltz.
Oh, well, sorry about it. But
no, that's okay.
No, but the thing
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, I know. But the thing that happened to me with that I hadn't really thought fully through, is how the people at the top are just these compliant little machines. I mean, and this guy, Rich Russell, right? He seemed clever enough guy. Okay, I mean, you can't be a complete dummy to figure out how to, without having any real prior experience, how to turn on a plane and get it flying. Okay, you can't be a complete fool. And so he had the IQ points up above his shoulder to do it. But a guy like that, he's always going to be in a low level job, and he's the guy that you want in a higher position, because he's going to be like, in that easygoing way, he's going to be saying, I don't think that this is really right, But since he's going to be in such a low social position, He'll never be in that position of being able to say, "Oh, I don't think that this is really right," and so nobody will hear him.
There is brooding, or breeding and brooding, intentionally using both words, in the management culture or in just the corporate culture in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, some of it is that complacency and the following rules and whatnot, but there's just a fundamental culture that's being produced, which is, and our side loves to say, oh, the alpha, go and prove you're the toughest guy in the room. But there is a culture that gets produced out of that, which is formed in a passive aggressive kind of way. It makes everybody feel like they have to walk on eggshells, being polite to everybody, not offending everyone, playing the politics game, the work. That it removes a lot of the fun that should be part of doing business. Yes, there's work to business. Everybody knows that. But there should be that creative dynamism, like you said, there should be more easygoingness in the job. Yeah. There should be, people who are just happy to be around each other.
Yeah.
And I've been in cultures that, start off interesting and happy and then end kind of miserable and structured. And that's been breeding for a long time. And this guy, to your point, and kind of related to the discussion on accreditationism, we kill that. We breed it out. And like I said, I'm sure a lot of guys listening to us, whether you're doing it now or not, are going to be on LinkedIn at some point in your life. It's going to be part of your mechanism of getting a job. Just look at the articles that are going to get posted there. All of them are about how you can be a better complacent worker.
Yeah.
All of them are about how you can appease your boss better. All of them are about making your resume stand out and all of this.
Being a better prostitute. Yeah.
It's all garbage. And, and that's the other sadness of this story. Because you do know this guy had a blog.
Really?
And and he was studying, I guess he was studying online video courses. So you saw him getting his notes together on how he would put his audio together and his video together. And you could see he was learning and blogging about building the piece parts. And it was just great. I mean, yeah, he's a novice, but he's actually has the passion, the energy to it. One of the great regrets of this story is and this is just the nature of human existence. You can't fix it. I really wish I would have encountered him. I really would have, not just had a good time for myself, but just the fact that you have people who are around you and recognize your value and recognize that you're a fun person to be with and say so to you. That is of immeasurable help. Yeah. Immeasurable help to do that. And while I certainly love that this guy had his moment to fly, there should have been, and it's a regret, there should have been more moments where people gave that to him. And I have a suspicion he didn't get very many of those.
I have a suspicion that most of us don't get it, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say in my own case, nobody says to me that, this is really good or whatever. I get comments, but not, and some of them are very kind, but for the most part, nobody ever, says to me on some conversation, hey, I really like the thing that you put up yesterday or whatever. I just don't get that at all. And a lot of times, when things are going well in work and real life work, I don't get any kind of, pat on the back or anything like that. And sure, I wish I had that, but it's just.
Well, Coach, after 64, 65, 66 episodes in, I think I can comfortably and with evidence behind me say it's enjoyable talking to you.
Well, it's a pleasure talking to you too. But I'm not fishing for compliments, but I meant that sincerely.
Then why is there a fish hook in my breast?
No, but seriously, in our society, you get to be an adult. When you're a kid, everybody's validating you all the time. Okay, and as you get into being an adult, there's less of that validation. And I think what happens is that, we all no longer have the time. And also, what's important to you as an adult is a lot of times things that you can't, that aren't really visible. Let me give you a specific example. Back in the day, I published my first novel. It was launched by a big publishing house, and it was a big launch. It was in all the Barnes and Nobles, back when Barnes and Nobles counted, right? And I remember going to a store, Barnes and Noble store, and there was a pyramid of my books. And it was a pyramid taller than me, right? And I'm 6 feet. And, it was a gold cover. It looked very shiny and new and all the rest of it. And it wasn't very exciting. It was just, it was oh, that's nice. The real moment of satisfaction for me wasn't even when I got the book deal. It was like, I remember very clearly there was a section of the book that was really complicated to do. Or at the time, my skill set was such that it was very complicated for me to do. And I pulled it off successfully. And that was enormous satisfaction. Okay.
Right.
And that kind of, because I felt, man, I really pulled it off. Later, I'd go back and read that stuff and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I sweated over this shit? What the fuck, right? But that's just because you got more experience under your belt. But the point I'm trying to say is that, see, as you get to become an adult, your moments of happiness, of feeling like a breakthrough, they become more and more private. They become less and less visible to others. Okay, when you're a little kid and you score you score the goal in your little peewee league in soccer, right? And everybody like applauds and they pat you on the back and your parents give you a hug and stuff like that. I mean, that's very visible. But as you get older, all those moments become invisible. They become private, and that's unfortunate. But that's the nature of being an adult, I suppose.
And I think we should think of this kind of in two buckets. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm actually okay with not getting like the pat on the back, like, oh, you did really good here, sport kind of thing. That's actually that's nice when it happens, but it's not the greatest thing of need. I think it's more what we need is just when you're just the actual act of being with other humans who just by their very actions around you show that they actually like you.
Yeah.
And they actually care about, like people who's like, hey, I see you're leaving the building. I want to wait for you to get on the elevator with me because I want to talk and see how things are going with you.
Yeah.
It's the, hey, there's a guy who actually is interested in like shooting the shit with you over a beer at the bar or something.
Yeah.
It's, or like saying like, oh, you're into flying. Oh, well, like, what about this? Do you think about that? That it's those are the life affirming moments, I think.
I agree.
More so even than like like I said, the pat on the back is good. But I think that's kind of secondary at the end of the day. It's really the human connection element of it. And I think, like I said, what was... sorry, go ahead.
No, that's why we like 4th of July barbecues so much. Because we're all milling around, shooting the breeze, having a beer, and there are a bunch of different people, excuse me, who don't ordinarily talk to one another. But, it's a neighborhood block party, and everybody's out for the 4th of July, waiting for the fireworks or whatever. And you're talking to people and just enjoying yourself, and there's no agenda. There's no, there's none of that stuff of like, why does this guy want to talk to me? Because that happens too, especially at work situations. I mean, come on, you know how that kind of situation is, where somebody is like, hey, Benway, let's go and have a beer, and you're like, this guy has not talked to me in months. Why does he want to talk to me now? Oh, he must want something. Oh, there's this project. Oh, that's why he wants to have a beer with me. Mm-hmm. That kind of calculation. But we don't have enough of those random 4th of July moments. We're just thrown together for arbitrary reasons that have nothing to do with anything of any importance in our lives. And so we are gently forced to interact with one another, and we find ourselves having a good time. There's not enough of that,
No. And what's also interesting about this one, this kid was 29. To be 29,
a baby.
Only 29, and feel that like I'm just a white guy. Fuck it, kind of thing.
I'm a white guy, so nobody cares about me.
Like 29 is like you in theory should only be starting to do some of your more major shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That and here's the thing. I know that the way we're structured in this society, 29 is already beginning to feel like, oh, you're old and past your prime, and on these these doors are shutting on you. It's like it's that joke people said like, I need to get into the right preschool first because if I get into the right preschool, I can get into the right kindergarten. If I get into the right kindergarten, I get into the right grammar school. Right grammar school, right high school, right college, and this right college is the right job, and right job, I'll be happy.
Yeah,
kind of thing. I mean, we have to. You're already structured. All the way back over there. I've seen people, and I've told you how many times I hate the members of my class, my economic class. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had to listen to about childhood applications so their kids could get into the right fucking kindergarten.
Yeah.
And elementary school. I shit you not. I cannot tell you how many times I've listened to that.
Yeah.
and how disgusting it is.
Yeah.
That's where we are. There's no such thing as free play. And I mean that this is actually a philosophical term.
Yeah.
I think it ties into Kant. I think Kant came up with this, which was the idea that one of the formative elements of the human being is this idea that you can take actions for no purpose in and of themselves. They're not going to do anything for you. They're not going to do anything for others. You don't have any material or kind of near material gain from it. You're doing it because it's joyful, because you get pleasure from it in and of itself. And in doing so, you actually construct the very character and well-being of the person that you're going to become.
Yeah.
This society does not fundamentally believe in that. I don't believe it, that this society has ever really exhibited it. Some people do in this society. Like I said, going back to the old days, Kant had that notion, but even, people who were actually successful business-ish people like the Eameses, the furniture designers, the Eames lounge chair, the Eames aluminum chair, they believed in free play. If you ever actually paid attention to what they were doing, they created like little toys that did nothing except, play, stimulate the imagination.
Yeah.
And they pushed it. They said that's fundamentally vital to the development of a human being. Even into the point when they wrote notes to each other, they wrote them as visual puzzle games. So like, they would, Charles Eames would write to his wife, Ray Eames, not in words, but in like a visual, let's say if I wanted to say in response to something you said, I see. I wouldn't write down the letter I and SEE. I would draw the picture of an I, and I would draw a picture of a wave, the C. And they would do that as like a code to uncover because it was fun.
Yeah. Well, my thinking is that play is essential. What happens to me is a daydream. I daydream all the time. Okay. And I think that it's essential for my sanity. And I'm going to be doing a video about it. That I think that daydreaming is, for me, a key component of my life. I daydream about all kinds of things that are ridiculous, usually the daydream, I'm like the main actor, but a lot of times what happens is that my daydreams, they just evolve into like, okay, I'm the main character, but I heard this story, and sort of like the focus of my daydream shifts over to this random story I heard of some other person, or this random story that I make up. And it's just so much fun to be daydreaming. Because it's just, to me at least, it's very soothing. But we're not encouraged to even talk about the fact that we daydream or what we daydream about. I always thought that the story, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, was. I
was going to bring that up.
Yeah,
I really was going to say, have you ever been compared to Walter Mitty?
Yeah, it's the famous story about daydreaming and about a man who's just very milquetoast and never does anything. But in his imagination, he's like a hero. He does all kinds of things. I've actually never read the story in full, to tell you the truth. But the story is so famous that I sort of like by osmosis, I've learned most of it. And he just has this this very quotidian life, jejune life would be more apropos, and he's just, there's nothing going on in his life, but how can I put this? The daydreaming is so necessary. It's just the free play.
Yep.
But our society is structured in such a way that, well, it's structured. And there's no time for free play. It has to be aimed at something, which I find just, there's nothing that's an end in itself. And I think that that's so destructive. I think that that's so destructive.
And there's also, the play date. I know that's been a long joke, but like I've seen this as well. And it's usually from the same people who are trying to get their kid into a good preschool. The parents are arranging who they play with, when, and under what circumstances. And you could tell there's engineering behind it. And that's the other bit that's not being said, but I'll say it on that front. Whenever I see parents talk about a play date or getting their kids in the right school, they're structuring what this kid's going to be. And it's above and beyond like making sure the kid's smart enough to not put a fucking fork in the electrical socket, or telling him, hey, sharing is good and be nice to other people. This is all about, and you even see it in quotidian and ridiculous Twitter posts. So like, oh, we try very hard to make sure that our child has gender neutral toys. It's for some reason my boy always seems to go to the masculine toys that are blue, and my girl always seems to go to pink. You could, that's the engineering.
Yeah.
They're trying to arbitrarily restructure the human spirit
Yeah.
in paths that they think are good, that they're told are good. And I honestly think this whole transgenderism is perfect for business, because they think to themselves, I've just doubled my the clothing market, or I've just expanded how much I could sell to any person, because now everything is within your bounds to be sold. Everything's can be marketed to you. You are the perfect consumer, because there's nothing particularly unique about you. Anything could go your way. And this is the outcome of this. And I know we hit on the left because they're a useful target. And I think they're a useful target. They're an accurate target. But I think people really need to appreciate just how much business kind of fuels that fire, and to what end.
Yeah.
And I think, we've hinted at it before. I think you probably even directly said it. But I think it bears note now. Like, this is the kind of guy who the system decided was going to be a baggage handler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where he was stuck. But this guy had the spirit of a pilot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, spirit in and of itself cannot be enough to be something. You have to actually work at it, right? But
he flew the plane. He didn't land, but he flew the plane.
Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is that, I think that social mobility is becoming less and less. But because we're having these, it's very clear that if you have the right degree from the right university, then you're going to be somebody. Okay. Look, Goldman Sachs is not recruiting in one of the state schools. It recruits from only a handful of schools, and they're all Ivies or upper tier schools, right? And if you didn't get into that school, you're not going to have access to Goldman Sachs. You're not going to, be a millionaire by the time you're 30, right? I mean, Goldman Sachs is not a prize, and you and I both know that. But you know what the point I'm trying to make here, that the society is becoming less and less meritocratic, and it is becoming harder and harder for people from the lower echelons of society to rise to the top. Now, this was one of the great virtues of the American system. But as of late, as of the last 20, 30 years, this is no longer the case. The people who are rising to the top are not even the smartest and most hardworking. They're the most compliant. They're the ones who are, going along to get along. They're the people who are not making any effort to rock the boat. That's why we've had such an incredible political, quote unquote, stability, which I don't think is political stability. I think it's political stagnation. And that's why we have Donald Trump as a president, because this political stagnation is brought to us by a class of people who do not want to rock the boat under any circumstances. They want things to, status quo, uber alles. That's the vibe I'm getting. And I think that this guy, Fight Club, Killdozer, they're symptomatic of the talented people who are disenfranchised from the current system. Okay, I mean, I can speak for myself. I was raised to be part of the elite. Okay, I had the brains and the background and went to the right schools and all the rest of it. And for various reasons, I was at the same time ejected from it, and at the same time sort of like turn my back on it because I find them contemptible. Okay, sometimes I can't tell if I was ejected or if I turn my back on them, because I truly, as you do, I truly find the class that we're a part of to be just contemptible and just pathetic, right? Because they don't seem to be people that I would respect, okay? So that being said, there are a lot of people like us who are really, really talented and who by all rights should be at the tippity top of the society, but are not. And a lot of them are disenfranchised, and they feel like, how come I don't have access, to the upper echelons of my society? And the answer is, of course, well, see, you're not compliant. You're not, marching to the tune that we've set, and therefore you're not going to be a part of the elite. And the problem is that, see, these people who are disenfranchised, politically and socially marginalized, they're the people with the most, they're the most energetic. See, that was the great genius of the American system, that it allowed the most energetic and capable people to rise. But as of late, as of the last 20, 30 years, that is no longer the case. The best are no longer rising. There is no longer that story. I'm trying to remember the story of
the best are, what was the line from Yeats? The best have lost all conviction, and the worst are filled with passionate intensity.
Mm.
And what's interesting is you had mentioned, there's a loss of meritocracy. I agree, but I would also phrase it this way. I've seen the definition of merit change to accommodate the status quo.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, you could argue that it always kind of was meant to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen, the notion of what is good, what gets good performance reviews, or even, what a good person is.
Okay, well, you give us the definition. I'm kind of curious because I think that I see the same thing, but I'm curious as to the specific definition that you've seen.
Well, it depends on the context, but I would say in business, I would say merit up until recently would have been along the lines of the person who can deliver the most effective whatever widget, work product, pick that drives more business that people want and actually inspires other people to do more. Now, merit who wins is based on whether you've done something for society, you're representative of the culture at play, things that have little to do with the actual function of your business.
Yeah,
right. That feeds and festers its way in.
Yeah,
and that's just business. I mean, you could pick whatever other.
Well, I see this coming from education. That it started in education because I saw it in the 80s and the 90s. That the college admissions were no longer about having good SATs and a good essay. It became an issue of like the extracurriculars that you were doing, and people started gaming them. I remember people gaming them. I remember, freshman orientation week, a very specific conversation I had with this girl who would later on become a corporate lawyer, and we're on this bus ride, right? Because we were going to some outdoorsy thing, and because at Dartmouth there are all kinds of outdoorsy things, right? And so we're on our way back to campus, and we're talking, and she's saying that her ambition is to be a Supreme Court justice, right? And she wound up being a corporate lawyer, a partner at a corporate firm, childless, of course. Anyway, this girl, we were talking about the admissions process and what we'd had to do. And she mentioned some activity that she had to do, some like do-gooder kind of, altruistic activity. And she rolled her eyes. She just said, oh, and I did this, and just eye roll. But and it was just that.
We did it too.
Yeah. It was so dismissive and contemptuous of it. Because the altruistic thing that she did, she didn't believe in it. She just knew that it was the way you got into a good school. You had to do this shit to get into a good school, right? So she did.
That was the way. Yeah, that was the way in my case. I mean, we had to do all the extracurricular activities we did wasn't for our health.
Yeah.
A lot of us did not want to go back home after 9 p.m. at night some days and then start homework and then not get to bed till like 1, 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
We did it for college. I mean, and even the do-goodery stuff, in my case, it was my community service at least was something I actually enjoyed doing, which was going to the forest preserve and cleaning up the refuse that people throw out of their cars. But I guarantee you 9 out of the 10 people who did that were there because, National Honor Society demanded it and because it looked good on a fucking college application. Yeah. I guarantee you that's what it was.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's becoming arbitrary. You got a couple of you got a vowel after your last name and first name, and you're kind of brownish. Oh, then you're gonna get an in at the good school. Oh, you're not. You're a little too pale, and your name sounds a little bit too English. Oh, you're fucked. Or now you're what? You're Kim from Korea. Oh, you're fucked. There's that story about that guy from India, from South Asia, India.
Yep.
Who
pretended he was black.
Pretended to be black. Yeah, and I saw the pictures. Yeah, and he looked like a black guy. It was really funny. Yeah. And the thing is, see, he is a minority, but of course he's the wrong kind of minority. So,
Well, like I said, the degree. Another story that stifled the minds of the people at University of Chicago when I was there. I may have said this before in a podcast, but I'll say it again, but it's a different context. I remember, and this was just how limited the mind of people you were dealing with. There was, some counter protest to some sort of Israeli event going on campus. I don't know if pro-Israeli students had like a placard of something, or were going to have an event or a speaker. I really don't care. But I think what ultimately happened was some pro-Palestinian group drew swastikas on it to, express their, resentment of it. And the university was freaking out. They thought this was, the end of civil society as we know it. And I had told these people, look, I don't understand why you guys are losing your shit. Yeah, you can be upset that they defaced the signs, but I remember as a kid when I would go into the high school bathrooms, kids drew swastikas off to the side of the stalls just because they wanted to fuck around with people. It really meant nothing. There wasn't an army of neo-Nazis parading the hall, picking up the one, the half Jewish kid we have and throwing his legs into the furnace. It just did not happen. And they were their response to me was like, what kind of rough school did you go to? I said, one that actually had people who thought and did crazy shit, unlike you. And they didn't like me when I said that.
Yeah.
I actually did say that too. But that was the nature of the business. And that kind of purging of the interesting, cool people happens in a lot of different contexts, right? I mean, we joke about Twitter, like all the cool people got kicked off Twitter a while ago, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But even it was funny. This goes roundabout to something else that happened in the news, but it's really related, so I'll bring it up. This was after Omarosa, the whatever her face was in the White House, says like, I have audio of Donald Trump's using the N-word, and the press secretary couldn't officially deny a negative or prove a negative.
Yeah.
Therefore, the tape must exist. You remember that? You're like, Mrs. Huckabee Sanders, can you say definitively that there will never be a tape that has Trump using the N-word on it? I'm like, well, how the fuck is she going to prove that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just proving a negative, which is a logical fallacy. Yet everybody turned around, and of course, the dipshits from National Review, David French, said, I really hope there isn't tape, because not only is the president shouldn't say that, but I just know that people are going to come and defend the indefensible, and I don't think that's a good idea. This is after, of course, he said that a guy making endless pedophilia jokes is actually A-OK on his book. Again, National Review is filled with fifth columnists, enemies of the conservative movement, people who want to just denature what we're trying to do here. A reason I bring up the context is this. Bill Buckley had been doing this for a very long time, knocking out all the interesting people out of National Review. And there's a good little quote here I have from people who are bitching about National Review, and I want to read this because this actually ties to what we're saying. The quote is this: let's make a list of people purged from or gagged at neocon National Review since its inception. Some of these names you're going to know, some of these names you're not going to know. Ravello Oliver, Russell Kirk, John O'Sullivan, Ann Coulter, Pat Buchanan, Murray Rothbard, Jared Taylor, Sam Francis, Joe Sorbrand, Chilton Williamson, Clyde Wilson, Thomas Fleming, Peter Brimlow, Edward Rubenstein, Paul Gottfried, Steve Saylor, John Derbyshire, Robert Westerberg, etc., etc. Looking at the names above, one can quickly see that the National Review, over the years, has, in essence, purged all of its most talented writers. Since the function of National Review is not to confront the left, but to police the right, as commentators have noted, it's no surprise that National Review is repulsed by talent.
Yeah. I think that applies to the whole society. Okay, because the names I was familiar with of that list, they're all interesting writers. Lots of times I disagree with a lot of the things that they're saying. But that's the whole point of an interesting writer. That's the whole point of listening to people who you don't necessarily agree with, but who come at things in an original way. They make you think about what you already think, Like for instance, I'm really looking forward to getting the Pat Buchanan book on the Second World War. Because like everybody, when I was a little kid, I read a lot about the Second World War, so heroic and blah, blah, blah. and him focusing it from a radically different perspective as to the causes of it and the real, giving the real scoop, if you will, about the war. That's interesting, and it'll make me think about it. And I'm not going to agree with everything he says. Maybe I don't even agree with most or any of what he says, but it'll make me think over what I think at this time. And that's the whole point. But if you're going to have like this policing of thought, not just on the right, because I agree, National Review just polices the right. It's not there to add anything good to the conversation. It's there to make sure that everybody toes the line, and they're the good little right wing, the good little acceptable right wing. Because I like on a personal level William Buckley, but I realized that he was an establishment figure who didn't really want to piss off the establishment. And that's why he created this right-wing police force, which is the National Review. But I don't want that. I want interesting ideas. I want interesting...
And that's the other element of this as well that you've hinted at. Remember, William Buckley, regardless of whether you say he's a conservative hero or a superstar or what have you, this is a man from Yale.
Yeah.
This is a man who famously started his attention by writing the book God and Man at Yale, who fundamentally, maintained friendships with people in that circle and thought to himself, I need to make sure that I'm still respectable to my fellow class peers. I mean, respectable. You're playing Bach on a harpsichord as fun. Let's keep things into perspective about reality.
Yeah. Totally right. Absolutely
Plus,
right.
he was a CIA man. Need I say more?
Yeah. Well,
not even like hiding it. He wrote fucking, he actually was a sort of pulpy writer. He wrote a series of books called like Branford Oaks, or that was his CIA character. It's like a man on his CIA missions. I've never read one of those books. I don't feel that I'm at a loss.
No, neither do I. I'm sure that they were very fluently written. There's no question about that. I mean, he had a lot of faults, but being a bad writer was not one of them. But look, I don't have a problem with William Buckley, but what I do have a problem is him silencing and marginalizing people who are interesting. Okay, and that's the whole society. The whole society has become so fucking milquetoast, and everything has been like in my field, writing, literature. Everything has been reduced to genres, and even literature is a genre. Okay, it's called serious fiction or literary fiction, which is just a genre. But serious fiction, literary fiction, before it wasn't called that. It was just called fiction. It was just called a novel. And a novel could be as serious or superficial as it wanted to be. And it didn't have to be like a specific genre. But now it is. And those are the books, I remember a book that I wrote that was not accepted. Everybody was like, well, what kind of book is it? Is it a literary book or is it a thriller? I'm like, I don't know. It's just this cool shit that I wrote. See? And everybody wants it, very in its package. And I think that that's the problem. We've allowed capitalism to overwhelm every aspect of our society. Or no, let me phrase that. A capitalistic mentality of usefulness and uselessness. And, free play is useless. Therefore, it is expunged. The random daydreams and the random imaginings are useless, therefore expunged. You see, and it's like that Japanese saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered. Yeah, our whole society is like that. Anything that sticks out, it gets hammered down. It's just fucking boring,
right?
And
it is, and well, I mean, and it proves that we're truly the utilitarian world. Right, Jeremy Bentham, and John Stuart Mill.
Yeah, they won.
They forced us to read those books. Those were the dullest books I ever read. And I'm a guy who really, me, I'm a guy who actually gets a kick out of political theory literature.
Yeah,
I thought those were the most inane, annoying books that I ever had to read. When I had to read John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, which I still have the likes of Sargon and company trying to quote at me, even though I know they're not clever enough to read it either. It's like it was like in one ear out the other with me. But those are the guys who won. And guess what? The society is one that goes in one ear and out the other with me.
Yeah.
It's in their image, my friend.
Okay, we're going way black pill. I felt that I feel the conversation has just jumped off into a pool of black pills. Okay, so let's. I want to turn to something else. By the way, the what you mentioned earlier, the Swedish riots. I'm like laughing my ass off. How do you say Schadenfreude in Swedish?
I believe it's the Swedish right-wing Democrat Party. That's how you say that, because they're in parallel to the country burning. The latest poll has them not only leading in general, but leading within every single age demographic.
Yeah, yeah, and the other political parties are trying to shut them down. I take it.
Oh yeah, I may have misheard or misread, but I think Facebook shut down their page like literally weeks before the election. I think it may have been stated or something. And again, forgive me if I've misquoted, but something along those lines happened. Some sort of social media takedown happened right before the election. They fought to get it back, and I think they did.
I'm sure that they did, but the thing is, see, that's just going to show that this whole democracy shit is just a facade. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in the will of the people. Fuck the people. It's what they want. It's the European Union über alles. I don't understand the fucking Europeans who have this system of theirs. It is so undemocratic, and nobody says fucking shit. They just accept it like it's the way things ought to be. Jesus Christ! I mean, they are so fucking cucked out, these fucking people. For those of you who don't know, in Sweden, in a bunch of cities, there was a coordinated riot across the whole fucking country. A riot started by the immigrants, by the Middle Eastern and African immigrants, that the Swedes, in their idiocy, accepted with open arms. They took in 600,000 migrants, because they're not refugees, they're migrants from the Middle East and Africa. These 600,000 in a country of 10 million, that is 6% of the population. To clue you in, imagine in the United States that they imported 18 million refugees. That is how many people they brought in. And these immigrants, these migrants, they rioted in a coordinated riot, a very violent one. Basically the whole country went up in flames. Okay, well, I'm exaggerating, of course, hyperbolically, but that's what happened. These fucking morons, and it was their. What it is. And I did a video about this. The arrogance of altruism. They are so pure. You saw that fucking bitch cunt on the airplane, the Swedish chick who got
the Green Party member.
Yeah, who got the plane to not take off and threw a hissy fit, a literal hissy fit. Okay, she got hysterical that they were deporting some guy who was a fucking criminal. I mean, can you believe that? And she's like a hero. I don't understand it. Does anybody rational think that this girl is anything other than a little twit who should be locked up in a padded room, for crying out loud? Oh, God. I'm sorry, I'm ranting.
Sweden. No, well, Sweden's been in a bad way for a long time, but that recent poll has me a little bit comforted.
No, they're not going to do it because they're going to cuck out like always. Because all the Swedes are fucking cucks.
You had mentioned we're getting a little too black pilled. I'll be the happy pill. On this one. I'll see how it plays out. I mean, for a long time, Sweden has been spiritually broken. Remember, this is the culture that had an empire that dominated the North. I mean, it was only with the rise of Peter the Great that their expansion was broken. This was also a culture who produced a filmmaker like Ingmar Bergman, who we think of as just perhaps some existentialist northern ennui guy, but who was fundamentally religious in a very strong regard. His father was a pastor who operated on the religious level in his films, who actually will admit when he was young, he was a fan of Hitler and, cheered his successes.
No, I like Ingmar Bergman as a man because he was a man's man.
And and there was that, this is a country that had spirit, and
had spirit. Yeah. Now they're all just cucked out losers. And I think that JD.
I always say
JD Unwin's.
I never say never.
Yeah, but JD Unwin's prescription saying that whenever a society starts allowing women unlimited sexual freedoms, that society goes down the tubes. Well, we're seeing it now. Now we're in Sweden. Sweden is the bleeding edge. That's as far as I'm concerned. They are cucked out losers. What they should do is just man up, sack up, and just kick those migrants who are burning their country. Jesus Christ. I have I said told in the podcast how the Chilean criminals took advantage of the Swedish refugee policies. I I think
I don't remember if you said it on the podcast or it was between the two of
Okay,
us.
so I'll just repeat
you
it
should go
quickly.
into it.
If I have, dear listeners, please forgive me. See, when the coup d'état happened in Chile in 1973, right? The Swedes, fucking morons, said any political refugee is welcome to come to the Swedish consulate, and we will evacuate you to Sweden. Okay, like that, right? And so, who took them up on the offer? Criminals, a whole bunch of criminals. Okay, and the Pinochet dictatorship did absolutely nothing to stop them because the large criminal element took up the Swedes on their offer, and the Swedes took all these people in to Sweden, flew them out to Sweden, right? And the Pinochet dictatorship did nothing to stop them, of course, because first of all, the Pinochet dictatorship was the authoritarian one, but if you wanted to leave the country, you're free to leave whenever you wanted to. Sometimes, you couldn't come back in because they wanted to exile you, but it wasn't like North Korea or the Soviet Union that you couldn't get out. Oh, no, no, no. If you want to leave, there's the door, okay? They didn't have a problem with that. And so all these criminals went to Sweden, and they get to Sweden, and they get housing, they get like stipends, they get all kinds of health care and benefits and all the rest of it. And these criminals, what do they start doing in Sweden? They continue their criminal activity with a vengeance.
Yeah, it reminds me almost exactly of how the 1983 Scarface begins.
Yeah.
That story starts in the early 80s. "Quote unquote" refugees from Cuba were allowed entry to the United States. The reality is Castro expelled a lot of criminals he didn't want to deal with anymore.
Yeah.
Of which Tony Montana was one.
Yeah.
And flourish. And the joke obviously is in Sweden it sounds like it's like that, but with public housing.
Yeah.
On top of it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that there's this story that is true. That is like in a lot of Swedish businesses, there'd be signs saying if you see a Latin American stealing, don't stop them. It's their culture. Okay. I mean, think about it. They were so. This is the 70s and the 80s. They were so concerned about the culture of these criminals, and not doing cultural imperialism back in the 70s and 80s, for crying out loud, that they wouldn't discipline somebody who was stealing. Okay, and the thing is, whenever Chileans go to Sweden, the Swedes automatically think that we're thieves. Okay, and well, we Chileans think that they're fools. So I don't know which you prefer to be called, a fool or a thief, right? Me personally, I prefer to be called a thief over a fool because the thief can be reformed, the fool never can be reformed. He's fool forever. And as far as I'm concerned, the Swedes are fools. They how can I put it? It is an arrogance, a presumptuousness to think that you are so good, that you are a humanitarian superpower, as they love to call themselves, that is so fundamentally arrogant on a moral level. It is the opposite of true humility, of true humanitarianism, okay? To think that way, to act that way, and to say, oh, come here, I am the big-breasted nation, come and suckle at my tits that are so bountiful that will, feed all of you with the milk of my wonderfulness. It's insane. It's an insanity, okay? But it is fundamentally arrogance. So I don't have any pity for the Swedes. Let them burn.
Well, I feel like there's a good story that kind of tells the status of Sweden. I'm basing this on what I heard maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I don't know how it resolved, but the Swedish crown jewels were stolen.
By a
Literally,
migrant?
like they were, I don't know by whom, but it was guys in a boat, just went into the cathedral in which they're being housed, grabbed them and left. They were chased a little bit. I don't know if they've ultimately been recovered, but it just fundamentally feels like, the crown jewels, the family jewels, to use the expression.
Yeah.
Are just, gone and they're like, I guess we'll find them.
Yeah, no, they're just, they are an exhausted people, okay? What we should do is just go over to Sweden, pick the attractive women, take them to some civilized place, and, the attractive women of breeding age, of course, because, what's the point of having some old crone, right? I mean, have you seen Ursula Andress as of late? Yeah, she's not a pretty sight, right? So anyway, take the attractive women back to some sensible, civilized country, and let Sweden be overrun by the little brown people that they allowed in. Let them take it over, man. Because what's the point? What's the point of saving a country like that? That number one is suicidal, and number two is so fucking arrogant that they don't understand what is going on. Okay, I mean, I don't know. I find them contemptible.
Well, I'm very interested to see how the next election goes.
Well,
I'm
yeah. When
very
is the next
willing to be-
election? Do
I'm
you have it
very,
known?
I think it's less than a month away.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I wonder if they're going to, if the election will be, tampered with in the name of, protecting the nation from the fascists.
Well, a nation that can't keep its crown jewels in order, how much electioneering can they pull off? You know
Oh,
what I'm
no,
saying?
actually, I think the opposite. Okay, a nation that corrupt and pathetic. It's limitless the kind of corruption that they'll allow. And see the blatant corruption, and everybody's like, oh, that's so awful. That they stole the election, and oh boy, let's have some whatever drink that they have. The little faggots. I just find them. How can I put it?
Tell us what you really think of Sweden.
I find it pathetic that a nation would surrender itself like that. I just don't understand it at all. Okay, I find it pathetic and contemptible. It affects me at some visceral level that I can't quite articulate. That how is it that they could allow this to be? God, man. Okay, screw it. There was something else you wanted to talk about.
They were defeated. Well, it's because they were defeated by the Russians several hundred years ago, and they never really recovered from that.
No.
But I still say and I maintain again, you won't really know how fucked they are until a month from now.
Well, we'll see. Yeah. What was the other thing that you mentioned that was really interesting? I wanted to talk about.
Ooh, what was the news? Oh, the president using the N-word.
Who cares?
David French got this from that. What? Oh, yeah. I saw it on the pedophilia in the church again.
Oh, yeah, that's boring. That's like we've been there, done that so many times.
I'll tell you the one thing I that happened out of that kind of did bother me was when we have non-Catholics coming in and directing how the church should be managed. At this point, I'm like, back the fuck off. Protestants and Jews typically telling us how to manage the church. The last two people who should be telling the church what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but I truly think that this Pope is a catastrophe. He's just a disaster. I mean, he's a fucking Argentine. That says it all. And that's all I have to say about that. No, the other thing that I hate to bring up this topic because we've done it to death, but it's just one more. As some Twitter guy said, oh, it's just one more lie. What's his name? Elon Musk tweeting out that he had like a big time law firm and Goldman Sachs behind him in like this buyback to turn Tesla private. And Goldman and this company are like, we don't have any agreement. What are you talking about? I mean, like, what the fuck is this guy doing? I mean, I think that the guy's circling the drain. I think that that's what's going on here. What do you? I mean, I think that it's imminent that the drain circling. What do you think?
What's my take on Elon Musk now? I think my take on Elon Musk is that I find him less and less interesting the more and more he talks.
Oh, no, I agree. But I'm asking the timing. The timing.
I mean, that it's part of the answer, though. The timing is just expresses how uninteresting he is, because it's all about saving his ass in whatever last kind of way he has. And he'll spin it in such a way as he'll be creative. It's like, at one point I think he was even saying, I'm going to have Saudi money.
Yeah.
And
the Saudis are like, what the fuck?
Well, who the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
I've seen way too many people give this guy a lot of credit because he occasionally will say an interesting thing, and they somehow think the cars are the coolest things since sliced bread and whatnot.
I've never driven one. Have you?
I've seen one. I don't drive. I haven't driven in a decade.
No.
Yeah. So yes. So forgive listeners. I'm not a car man. I appreciate the freedom of being able to drive at night, and especially in summer with good music and a nice breeze coming your way. but I've not. I'll tell you, I'm the type of person who, when I'm behind the wheel, gets oversensitive to all the info and stimuli coming my way that I start to freak out.
Oh, no, no,
I'm not a great.
I'm not like a great driver either. I wouldn't characterize myself as that. But also, I'm not a. I never try to go fast. I mean, it's. I used to own a sports car, a really great sports car, Mercedes 300 SL, 1986. It was a six-in line, 3,000 cubic centimeters, just fast. That was a fast car. I once pushed it to about 240 kilometers an hour, which is what, roughly 150 miles an hour, and there was still like it still had oomph in it. I was it still could have gone faster, but I was starting running out of road, so I had to like ease back. Right, that was a fast goddamn car. But in general, I'm not lead foot. I like to just I like to cruise. I like convertibles, and I like to like you know putter along with the breeze. That kind of thing. I'm not like you know what I'm saying? But
No, that's the image like I said, that to me, the best thing I can do where I live, if I were to take be it a convertible or what have you, and drive along the lakeshore of Chicago from the north to the south or south to north, it doesn't matter, blasting some good, you can dismiss and poo-poo me if you want, kind of. I like 80s synth music.
Mhm.
It's just perfect for the time. It's the sound I associate with the city because there's certain movies that used it.
Yeah.
I late at night, you have it with good breeze, and I'm going up and down the city with the lights and the lake on the one side, and just doing all that. To me, that is a great. It's the flying that our Russell fella did.
Yeah.
That is the moment of reverie,
Yeah.
of which certain kind of the free play of the mind mixed with the visual and visceral stimuli around you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the those are the bits of life which, to me, I think ultimately are the things I look most for. Yes, success can be interesting, the nice house, all these other things, but it's really those moments of reverie that I think ultimately are the things I try, not only the things I most remember, but the things I most try to recapture whenever I can.
Mm.
And what's, in a weird way, my sense of self goes away in those moments.
Yeah.
I don't really care about the various details of my life. I mean, it doesn't, just fundamentally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just perhaps it's perhaps it's a little too Buddhist of me to say that, but the sheer, almost like a nirvana moment, I guess. Everything kind of fades away, and you're just appreciative of this kind of situation that you've managed to experience. And I'll say this, at the end of the day, Elon Musk thinks he's, this hot shit guy, but there's nothing about the man that really tells me that there's like a reverie that's going to be created by whatever he's doing. It's just not in him.
No, no, no. I don't think that he doesn't have the Steve Jobs thing, you know.
Yeah.
Because Steve Jobs, for whatever flaws he had as a man, he had that ability. But yeah, Elon Musk just yeah, I think it's all going to collapse on him. I mean, I feel bad because it seems that Tesla is a good product. But oh well, insofar as Rich Russell and going off into the wild blue yonder, that is a powerful image. That idea of you look out into the distance, and this plane with the straight wings, right? It's arcing gracefully up against an orange sky, and you know that the man piloting that plane is alone and he has no future, and that plane is going to crash in just a little bit. Because even if he'd landed, he would have gone to jail for 1,000,000 years, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that plane, that man, he's just enjoying the last few moments he has on this earth. And he's not on this earth. He's off in the sky and just like, wondering, can I do a barrel roll? Shit, let's try. That kind of spirit, that kind of like freedom, he basically decided, fuck it. Just fuck it all. I'm just gonna, enjoy myself. And I think that that is the real lesson of Rich Russell, that he basically said, just say fuck it and enjoy the moment. And that is just such a powerful thing. And I think that that's why that image of that plane gracefully arcing up against an orange sky, that's going to be a symbol for our side. Because I think that ultimately the thing that is going on our side is that a lot of the people are so fucking talented, and yet they are completely disenfranchised. And that's the thing. So many are so talented but disenfranchised. And so where do they go? Where do they go? And there's that.
Well, and also to continue our language, there's something about those images, be it, like I said, Russell on the plane, or like I said, any kind of these moments of artistry that you encounter, or the free play of a performer who can just do his thing well. There's something about the willingness to express the joy of that free play that no black pill can ever come close to masking. In fact, that in the moment of, like I said, ultimately a suicide mission, right, of the guy, we can't even, encapsulate this with the fact that this was a man who with a death wish, because even within the death wish, it's completely disappeared into nothingness for the fact that look at the gracefulness of what he was doing and the light that it happened.
Yeah,
there is. I know you're not religious. I won't say whether or not I am, but that is a manifestation of the divine moment.
Yes, absolutely. That is, yes. There are moments when I'm at work when I feel that I'm like touching something profound like that, something evanescent, something. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
There are moments like that, and I think that guy experienced it in spades, okay? Or at least I hope I do. Maybe I'm just fooling myself, but I hope that he experienced that. I hope that when he was on that plane doing his barrel roll, cruising around doing his loop-de-loops, I hope that he found the joy that it seems as if he was having. I mean, from what I see of him, he seemed to be, enjoying that beautiful moment. I hope that was the case. I mean,
it's impossible to see that there was no joy in this. I cannot believe that. There's just way too much synchronicity, and if this was a man who had just nothing in him, right? This was just the end. No one would have taken to this. They would have just said, "Oh, a guy committed suicide." A lot of people commit suicide.
yeah.
We did not respond to the suicide.
No. It was that moment of freedom, that moment of just gliding up against that orange sky. Oh man, it's such a wonderful thing. It was so beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm looking at right now as we're talking about this thing? I'm looking at this 1971 LTD that's for sale, right? 72 rather. It's for sale, and it's this beautiful car. It's this big, very big American car, a convertible, right? And it's just this monster car. It's a two-door, right? But it's it dwarfs modern day four-door sedans, right? It's just inefficient, overly spacious, with this totally like a convertible, okay? And you say to yourself, man, this is the car. This is the chariot of a free man, okay? And and that's what I'm thinking about when I'm talking. That's what I'm looking at while I'm talking to you about Rich Russell. That was the chariot of a free man. For that little moment, he was free. That is a powerful thing.
I think on that note, that is a podcast.
Yeah.
I should say thanks, everybody, for listening to this one. I have a feeling a number of us who listened to this had some sort of similar response to this event. I just know our crowd, right?
Yeah.
And I think, hopefully in talking about this, I think we got a little, really not kind of desperation, but certainly a joy out of this. There was something to appreciate with this. And Coach, I'm switching the tables on you. Any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm going to buy the 72 LTD.
I knew you were looking for an excuse.
Yeah.
And you finally got one.
Yeah.
Oh, Godspeed.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to buy myself a 71, 72, 73 convertible LTD. I'm going to find one and I'm going to buy it. Yeah, definitely. I'll if I haven't bought it within the next 4 months, you can call me a liar. Yeah. Okay, that's all I have to say for this episode. So take us out.
All right, everybody. Yeah, everybody, thanks for listening to us. You are going to see us. You can't see us. Listen to us very soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye.